a 430 Scuderia, 2009?
Yeah, so exactly. So 430 generally means 4.3 liter V8. Usually the number pertains, at least in some generality, to the engine displacement. And so that was a huge step up from the 3.6 liter V8 and the 360 before it. You also went to a timing chain driven motor, so a lot of the maintenance is a lot more manageable on this car. I love the 360s. That was kind of the first car they really felt like could be daily usable. Prior to that, 355s were some pretty significant maintenance issues and things of that nature, but these are cars that you really can put miles on. Now at 35,000 miles, this is a pretty high mile example, but it's treated me quite well, so I love it.
Twin turbo V8?
Nope, naturally aspirated. They stayed naturally aspirated as long as they could, but at the volume of cars they wanted to produce with the California T and the 488, they've now gone full turbos. And that hurts the sound a little bit and things like that, but it does generate great power.
Yeah. Do you like the stick, or do you...
I love stick cars, and so one of the reasons I was really comfortable buying this car is that you could, there is a company in San Antonio that's converting them to manual. And so I drove one of their cars and really liked it. That being said, my wife doesn't drive a stick, and I like her being able to drive the cars. And so she drove this one around and really liked it. So I'm going to keep it sequential for a while, because for a track-focused car, it does offer an advantage. And also, since I have a manual Lamborghini, that's kind of the best of both worlds. They complement each other really, really well.
Do you do much track time?
I do a few times a year. I'd like to get more into it. I mean, honestly, taking a car that's this expensive out on the track can be kind of a reckless idea, because it's tough to get insurance and the risks are just really, really high, and you don't get better. So you can have a lot of fun having a car that's really fast and then you can pass all the low horsepower stuff. But really, the chance to be in something that allows you to really learn that because it's got less power and you need to conserve momentum and do better, that's a better approach. Right. So I'm going to try to take the old Audi out and do maybe one lap of America in it, which is like 10 different tracks in the course of a week. Yeah. I think that'd be a lot more fun and I'd get a lot better.
Do you do Road Atlanta? Ever done that one?
I actually worked at Road Atlanta as kind of a young instructor and assist with drills and things like that for the Panos Racing School and Audi driving experience as a summer job after high school. So I love the track. It's amazing, and just everything else about the history of the track and the Whittington brothers and everything else that's going on at Road Atlanta, I just love. So
the entire Cannonball run, you escaped the cops and not getting a ticket, but in the last 3 weeks you got in a little trouble, right?
I have gotten into a bit of trouble. Fortunately, on 4 of the 5 stops, I was able to talk the officer into warnings, but on one in Arkansas, we got a little bit of a reckless driving charge. So my court date for that is tomorrow, so the attorney is going to appear there on my behalf. But you generally don't want to show up on a ticket that high, because the judge will be inclined to teach you a lesson. And we were driving on this rally that all the stickers are still in the car for. We were on a route from ultimately Nashville to Las Vegas, but on that leg we were driving from Memphis to Dallas, so we were in southeast Arkansas and met up with a couple of state troopers. I guess we passed one on a divided highway with a median in the middle, and he clocked us, he claimed, at 111 and a 70. And so we went around the next bend, not knowing that he was in the process of going down, turning around and coming back. But the next cop that we passed pulled out in front of us, turned on his lights, and signaled us to get over. So we immediately pulled over. At that time, maybe we were going 90, I don't know. And so we pull in right behind him, but he just jumps out of the car going nuts. I mean, he's got his gun drawn, he's intense, kicks his door open. And I'm like, whoa, 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 hands on top of the steering wheel. And he's like, get out of the car. I'm like, okay. I'm going to unbuckle my seatbelt here. And so he's, really worked up, proceeds to pull me out of the car and immediately handcuffs me.
Wow. Just
out of nowhere. Doesn't say we're under arrest, but says, go stand behind my car. Doesn't read us our rights, but he gets more handcuffs and handcuffs the other 2 guys in. And I'm like, man, this is really 0 to high order violence pretty quick. So we're just standing there. He's like, what are y'all doing? Well, we're just going to Dallas. He's like, well, why'd you go 111 past a trooper? And I'm like, well, obviously we didn't know there was a trooper there, and it was 111 if you say so, but we're sorry. It goes a lot faster than that if you try. And he starts calming down, but as I get talking to him, he tells me that he's just been a cop for about 8 months, so he probably just got a radio call that he's about to have a high-speed chase with 2 Ferraris and a Porsche, and all 3 of us had pulled over together. So we kind of start disarming him. I tell him about some of the charities we work with, one of which is the Cannonball Memorial Run, and I'm the only civilian that tends to do that drive, but it's all cops, and they raise money for the families of fallen officers. So, it earned some good favor. We had stickers on the car for that. So, he starts to breathe a little easier. He gets some friends showing up, and then we had 4 or 5 police cars on the side of the road, and the rest of the rally is kind of tiptoed past, or some of them were in the rest area that we were adjacent to. And over time, we get him talked into, well, he's going to let us go with just a ticket, but that ticket was also reckless driving, and he claimed he had to write it for reckless driving. I don't necessarily think that was the case, but I don't know where it'll end up. Generally, we have a sponsor called Ticket Clinic that is one of the YouTube channel sponsors for the VINwiki channel, and they help people find the best attorney in any market to kind of help figure out the best way to deal with a ticket. And so that was a very useful contact. So I found a good old Arkansas lawyer, and he's been kind of trying to get in touch with the right prosecutors to figure out exactly what he can work out. Because usually, if you're not a habitual felon, they're going to figure out a way to give you some higher fine for a lesser charge that doesn't get you points or doesn't go on your license or get notified to your insurance.
You've been an entrepreneur for a while because you were in college, right? You went to Georgia Tech.
I did.
And you started. I thought I read you started your exotic car rental service right out of Tech. Right?
Yeah, in my dorm room. So back then, this would have been 2006, in kind of the economic atmosphere that precipitated the downturn that we saw in 2008 and 9, and you could get stated income loans for anything, including exotic cars. And so at 20 years old, I got a stated income loan for my first Lamborghini, and got it, started renting it out. A few months later, I bought my first Ferrari and built the fleet up from there. Got some really dedicated customers that really treated that as an ownership alternative. I wasn't so much targeting the rap videos and the out-of-town people that were in for conventions or whatever. We got that stuff, but what I really liked were the people that were kind of treating this as beating the game, especially in 08 and 09 when luxury assets were just depreciating like crazy.
Do you have any tech to enable that, or were you just kind of word of mouth letting people know?
Well, that was just the absolute beginning of social media marketing, and obviously I didn't have any budget for marketing. I'd used every dollar I had for the down payment on this Lamborghini, and so I needed to figure out ways not just through like guerrilla marketing at car shows, but also to try to be able to get in front of people online. And so I was using forums and things like that to really be active in the community of enthusiasts, and that's where I'd find these people that wanted cars, but they weren't interested in them depreciating at some point 5 to 10% a month. It was so rapid. So when we saw some of these massive market adjustments, there was generally no circumstance that I couldn't make driving an exotic car over any time or distance cheaper than you could just go and buy one and own it yourself.
So then you did that for a while. How many? You built it up to how many cars?
I think I had 6 at the peak. That was really all you needed. I mean, it's really cool to have a warehouse full of a ton of cars, but people only want to rent Ferraris and Lamborghinis, and so everything else is just for the vanity of the postcards.
Yeah, okay. So then after college, then what was your next step?
Well, so as the economy bottomed out, the quality of the customer base eroded because it became actually more beneficial to buy your own depreciated car and just wait for the market to kind of strengthen, which it did, but it took several years. And so I started to have a lot of more people mistreating the cars, not turning them in on time. Just it was a much less sound business model, and the risk just got too great. And so for a long time I've been courted by the local exotic car dealers to see if I would come sell cars for them, and the local Ferrari store and the local Lamborghini store both wanted me to come sell their cars. And so I thought that sounded miserable. I knew the lifestyle of exotic car sales, but I knew it was a place that I could learn a lot about the industry and really make a mark. And so I went to Lamborghini because at the time, even in 2008 and 09, when this car was new, they were still sold out years in advance. And so it was really just order taking at Ferrari. And so I was the director of sales at Lamborghini Atlanta. And during that time, we got the Aston Martin franchise and the McLaren franchise, and I kind of led both of those brands initially. And I really enjoyed that. I love the transactional nature of sales, because even though I'm a technology entrepreneur today, I'm not really as much of a tech guy. I understand the power of technology to make other business models a lot more capable, a lot more sustainable, and a lot cheaper to deploy. Because obviously starting lean, staying lean, bootstrapping as far as you can is something that's been quintessential to the way that VINwiki has been successful. And so I was at the dealership for 6 years and did a lot with making sure that the customers just developed this idea of community, of loyalty to the store, of loyalty to me, and to make sure that they understood that buying a Lamborghini from us was a very different idea than just buying one off the internet, because obviously everyone's using technology to market, everybody's using social media, but making sure that we could go out on these beautiful roads and drive together, go to dinners together, host events, and everything else that could really augment the experience of ownership was really just a transformative thing within regards to sales.
Right. So you're working at the dealership, and that's when you did the run, right? You did the cannonball run, right?
And that was really the point that changed it. And I knew that doing something that could render you branded as an outlaw could very easily interrupt traditional employment. And that was something, among the risks I knew I was taking. But I didn't know how much of a change it was going to be. I mean, in the days following the announcement of our record, we couldn't even do business at the dealership because all the news outlets were just calling, asking to interview me. And, that's not the kind of thing that the owner and the general manager of the store that are trying to actually run a business necessarily want. I mean, all marketing can be good marketing, but that was a distraction. And so as I started to become more successful, mostly based on having more of a name within the industry, people were buying cars from Ed rather than buying cars from Lamborghini Atlanta. And that's not necessarily the most desirable thing. And you see that across the board about employers that don't necessarily understand exactly the ways that their employees are cultivating social media to create deals. And so what I was doing was just creating such a constant stream of dedicated business that it really created some pretty strong disparities between what I was doing as a salesperson and what the rest of the guys were. And so that can cause some friction, cause some heartburn. And not long after the record run, actually the month after, my wife and I got pregnant by very much her design, and we ended up having a baby just about a year later. And so at that point, I knew that 70, 80 hours a week at a car dealership was not the long-term sustainable operation that I was looking for in terms of personal and work-life balance. And so without really knowing what was next, I decided to leave. And I had gotten in the habit, which I'd recommend anyone do if you have any entrepreneurial interest or bent, is just find like-minded people and meet with them regularly. Not with an agenda, not with a direction, not with a specific idea necessarily, but just to spitball, brainstorm, and to be in the company of people who at least like to think the way you like to think. And so every few months, even through the time at the dealership, I'd get together with a good lawyer, a good accountant, a good numbers guy, a good sales guy, somebody who knew different aspects of web development, app development, and things like that, and really learn what we could do. What did the resources in that room allow us to start thinking about? And I started doing that with a little bit more haste once I left the dealership in November of 2015. And in December of 2015, we came up with the idea of VINwiki.
Okay.
And VINwiki grew out of a lot of the things I did personally to sell cars at the dealership, because what I certainly learned was that we could change the way that a car was perceived, not through what Carfax would say, not through what the window sticker would say, not through what a previous owner would say, but to really curate the history of the car's timeline. And when we did that, that became a much more compelling narrative than what they could find elsewhere. And they would buy a car because I said it was a good car, and I showed them why it was a good car, and I showed them what the market could do, rather than just because this is what the numbers would say or quantitatively made the most sense.
So you were selling them cars?
It was mostly used cars.
Oh, they were used cars.
Exactly.
Okay, so
we'd sell both, new and used, but it was a lot healthier to sell more used cars.
And then that's when you would put stories behind those cars.
Exactly. So taking note of the power that you could wield by really curating the history of cars yourself and as a group is really where the idea of VINwiki came from. And we describe VINwiki as a social version of Carfax, or a crowdsourced vehicle history reporting platform.
So basically, if I go on VINwiki and I find my old 98 Honda Prelude,
exactly,
I can attach a story to it.
Yes.